On May 14, 2012, a forestry survey drone captured an image that should not exist. In the heart of the Olympic Peninsula, miles from any known trail, it found a structure. Not a cabin and not a ruin. It was a concrete monolith, 30 feet tall, with no doors, no windows, and no seams. It looked as though it had been poured into the earth like a liquid, then frozen in time. When the survey team returned on foot 3 days later, they didn't find the monolith. They found a hole. A perfectly vertical shaft 300 feet deep, lined with the same seamless concrete. At the bottom, there was no equipment, no debris. Just a single vintage 1970s rotary telephone sitting on a plastic chair. And it was ringing. If you found a phone in a place where no wires could possibly reach, would you answer it? This is the transcript of the only call ever recorded from the Olympic shaft. It lasted exactly 42 seconds. The voice on the other end wasn't a person. It was a recording of a man describing his own funeral in the past tense. A funeral that, according to public records, wouldn't take place for another 15 years. Why was a government-funded survey suppressed 48 hours after this discovery? And why did every member of that 4-person team vanish from the public record within a month? Tonight, we aren't just looking for a missing location. We're looking for a missing reality. My name is Elias Thorne. I've spent 12 years as a skip tracer, finding people who don't want to be found. But I didn't choose this case. It chose me. In 2023, I found a box under the floorboards of my late father's workshop. My father wasn't a surveyor. He was a frequency analyst for the Department of Energy in the late 70s. Inside the box was a single coordinates list and a series of audio logs. My father's voice, usually calm and academic, sounded afraid. He spoke about Project Dial Tone, a 1978 experiment to communicate with nonlinear temporal zones. He believed that sound didn't just travel through air, it traveled through time. The investigation takes us to the town of Gurnard, Washington, a place that was decommissioned in 1984. The government didn't just close the post office. They tore down the buildings and planted trees over the foundations. They erased the town, but they couldn't erase the memories of the people who lived nearby. Witness. We used to hear it through the vents. Not music, not talking, just the sound of a phone ringing. But it was coming from inside the walls. My husband tried to cut the power, but the ringing stayed. It was like the house itself was trying to answer something. I tracked down the 1982 property records for Gurnard. Every home in the 5-mile radius of the shaft coordinates was owned by the same holding company, Resonant Foundations. I found a photograph in the archives of a local library. It was taken during the clearing of Gurnard. There were no phone lines in the shot. No poles. No wires. Just the man and the receiver. I ran a digital enhancement on the photo. Behind the man, the air appears to be rippling, like heat off a highway, but in the middle of a winter forest. Audio log, Elias's father, July 19, 1979. We've established a connection. It's not a voice. It's a repetition of a specific frequency, 18.2 Hz. The subjects are beginning to report echoes. They see their own shadows moving before they do. We've had to increase the sedative dosage. I decided to find the shaft. I used my father's coordinates. The closer I got, the more the equipment began to fail. My GPS showed me in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. My digital watch began to count backwards. The bleached forest is real. The trees aren't dead from disease. They've been drained of pigment. Even the soil is a pale, ashen gray. And then I heard it. It wasn't coming from the ground. It was coming from everywhere. The sound was vibrating in my teeth. I reached the coordinates of the 2012 drone sighting. The hole was gone. In its place was a house. It was my childhood home. Every detail, the chipped paint on the porch, the swing set I broke when I was 6. It was sitting in the middle of the Olympic Peninsula, 300 miles from where it was actually built. I went inside. The air smelled like my mother's perfume and ozone. The power was off, but the kitchen light was flickering in a pattern. Morse code. It was repeating the same word over and over. Listen. I found the living room. It was empty, except for a plastic chair in the center. and on that chair a yellow rotary phone. I realized my memories were being accessed. The house wasn't there. It was a physical manifestation of my own subconscious, pulled into reality by the frequency. I saw a shadow on the wall. It wasn't mine. It was my father's. He was standing in the corner, but when I turned my flashlight, there was no one there. I picked up the receiver. My own voice came through the line, but it was older, tired. Voice on phone, Elias, you're late. You've been here for 20 years. Look at your hands. I dropped the phone. I ran, but the hallway didn't end. I passed the same kitchen, the same flickering light, the same yellow phone over and over. I wasn't in a house. I was in a loop, a temporal pocket created by Project Dial Tone to preserve something. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital in Port Angeles. They found me wandering the logging roads, dehydrated and incoherent. They told me I'd been missing for 6 months. To me, it had been an hour. But that's not why I'm telling you this. I found my father's box again. I looked at the coordinates one more time. They had changed. They now pointed to the very hospital room I was sitting in. Yesterday, I received a call on my cell phone. The number was blocked. When I answered, there was no voice, just the sound of a forest, wind through trees, and then a dial tone. Project Dial Tone didn't want to talk to the past. It wanted to archive the present. And once you've been heard by the frequency, you aren't a person anymore. You're just another recording in the vault. Somewhere in the woods, the phone is still ringing. And eventually everyone answers.